Welcome to Email After Hours by SenderScore, powered by Validity.
We're your hosts. My name is Hanson.
And I'm Danielle Gallant, and this is Email After Hours. Welcome to another episode of Email After Hours. Today, we're tackling one of the most critical and often misunderstood topics in email marketing, and that is reputation recovery. So if you've ever seen your emails start landing in the spam folder or watched your sender reputation tank, this episode is packed with insights that you do not want to miss.
Absolutely. Our guest today is Nicola Selenu, a true expert in email deliverability with over 15 years of experience. That's almost as much as me. He is currently email deliverability principal at Validity Partner Active Campaign, and he's worked with some of the biggest brands globally, helping them navigate deliverability challenges and fine-tune their email strategies. And he's here today to share his deep knowledge of what's going wrong with data metrics, what senders need to monitor instead, and how to recover from a reputation nosedive without losing your mind. Nicola, it's really exciting to have you here with us today. Let's dive in and start unpacking the strategies for restoring a strong email reputation. And Danielle, you're going to kick us off.
I am. So before we do any actual email questions, of course, we have to ask you our opening sort of icebreaker question. So hopefully I'm right about this. You're Italian. Your background is Italian, but you've been living and working in Dublin for a long time now. So a really tough question for you to kick off today. Peroni or Guinness? Which one?
I'd say Guinness. Honestly, just because I want to live in Dublin a little bit longer. But yeah, no, I would say let's go with Guinness.
An easy choice. Love that.
Guinness is great and it's good for you. So listen, before we dive into today's conversation, let's touch a little bit on that 15 years of experience. We'd love to hear a bit about your journey. You know, all those years in email, even included a spell at Groupon. We know them well. You know, that must have been quite an experience. I think if you can get deliverability right at a huge program like that, you can probably get it right anywhere. So, you know, what lessons have you learned along the way that you're still using today?
Absolutely. And again, thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here with you guys. I started with Contact Lab professionally, again, 15 years ago. And Contact Lab is, or at least it used to be, the biggest email service provider in Italy, and for a very long time, Southern Europe. We had, Gucci, Armani, Bulgari, Last Minute, all the big brands.
Luxury.
Yeah, a lot of luxury. All the Italian luxury brands were sending globally. The funny part is that when I left Contact Club for Groupon, I basically moved from big enterprises to massive single brand that was sending more than all those brands combined. I think I can share the number because the time I was working at Active Campaign was literally at its peak. We were sending about 700 million emails every day just for group. And that's insane, right? It's just one brand. But when I moved to Groupon, again, single brand, 15 countries instead of, global, truly global. But given the volume, the size, and given the fact that our revenue, everything, depended by the email channel more than anywhere else, I learned a lot, really a lot at Groupon just because of the kind of mindset. So it helped me shaping, a different mindset in a way. Even the tiniest issue with those volumes, as you can imagine, is like huge. So we had, real-time data, and we knew exactly, and that's the beauty of working at Groupon at the time, at least, was that we knew exactly if there was a problem with a certain provider and what that meant in terms of revenue.
You're giving us a perfect segue into the topic today. It sounds like you were thrown in the deep end because, of course, as I said, today we are talking about reputation management. But before we do that, for the maybe blissfully uninitiated, we should start off with a definition. In the world of email, what is a sender reputation? And so by that, I mean, how is it calculated and how is it used? And how does an email program really hinge on that reputation?
In very simple terms, reputation refers to how trustworthy a certain sender is to appear in the eyes of a certain mailbox provider. But you might have a very good reputation with Google and maybe not that so good one with Yahoo, or etc. Definition is how trustworthy you look, but like to each of them, I don't even, again, there are ways of calculating how reputable you are. Of course, and it's also true that people tend, or at least us in the industry, tend to simplify things and say, IP reputation versus domain reputation. So we tend to attach the same concept to the sending domain and the actual IP. The reality is that everything has a reputation in email and deliverability. So the actual reputation of a certain sender is sort of the sum, a combination of all those individual kind of reputation. And there's no doubt, for example, that the sender score is an interesting way of assessing the things. So ignoring best practices, it's the main thing. So poor list hygiene practices, it's list acquisition, list hygiene is probably the main thing if you want to. But again, you might have issues and you are not aware. So effectively, you are ignoring that something is going on is huge. In fact, we discussed earlier about the fact that you might issue at a certain provider and not necessarily with another. The reality is that if you ignore that, at a certain point, the same issue, because you are having the same practices, so it's likely at a certain point, another mailbox provider will judge you in not so well way, because you didn't change anything. There is another, say, another bucket, and it's where there are maybe abuses or other things. Somebody is impersonating your domain, is abusing your platform. To a certain extent, you can control that, but you cannot necessarily control everything. Again, if I remember in the late 90s and early 2000s, just mentioning Adobe or other big brands was a spam word, because at that time, spam words were a thing. Adobe didn't do anything wrong, and I'm using them as an example, but at that time. But since a lot of spammers and phishers were using that brand name, their reputation was problematic. They couldn't actually deliver email properly because somebody was abusing their name.
Even as you've said, you've helped quite a few brands bounce back from, your language is so nice, where you're like, mailbox providers not viewing you so well. We're calling it a reputation shipwreck. And so when a brand first comes to you, or you just start working with a brand and they're asking for help to recover that reputation, what is your approach? What's your first step? Are you looking for the root cause right away, or do you kind of look at the bigger picture first?
You will have to identify the root cause before moving to a recovery phase. You need to first stop the bleeding, or whatever is the actual problem. You need to make sure that it's not there anymore. So you must fix that. Will lead to completely different paths, of course. But before that, you will always have to collect as much data as possible. One of the very first things that I do is checking the domain distribution. You want to know what particular list that sender has, meaning how many Gmail versus Microsoft, so Yahoo versus B2B contacts, then in the B2B, which providers, which corporate. So that's very important, because that will completely change the direction of, not completely, but definitely define the direction you go. So I would say that probably I will start with that, and then, so you collect the data, you identify the domain distribution, and if you could, and usually again, been working with ESPs for so long, I also have access, as I was saying, technical logs, SMTP logs that are so helpful. So checking that as well, and plotting data split by provider over time. I'm still a big fan of that. It's the old school deliverability approach that it never fails. Tell a story.
Cool. So you've pulled together all the data and you've given us some great suggestions there, which hopefully identified the cause of the problem. Now we need to pull together a plan to fix what's gone wrong. And I think it's fair to say that reputation recovery can't be one size fits all. So once you have identified the problem, what does corrective action typically look like? And is it usually short-term technical fixes? Is it changes to long-term strategy? Or is it maybe a combination of both?
Yeah, for sure. things that are more related to the actual reputation, those will take at least a couple of weeks. Again, it depends. If somebody really screwed up, it's going to take a very long time. And again, big customers years ago that their IPs, we left them cool down like 6 months, and the same cool IPs for 6 months in certain providers, we're still having issues compared to other cool IPs.
Totally. I think it's about the longevity of the problem too, right? Like if a domain has been in the hole for years, which sometimes we see with new clients that come to us, it's going to take a while to get out of that hole. But I've heard the quote, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. As you're going through and assessing a deliverability issue or a reputation issue, what tools do you recommend to your customers to help them keep an eye on their sender reputation? You've already mentioned bounce logs, of course, which we know can be difficult to get a handle on. But what else? What else are you recommending?
Google Master Tools became such a key tool product to have an idea of your reputation, and if you're doing everything right, even in the new compliance status dashboard. So the Google Master Tools, both the old one and the new one, they are incredibly helpful, mostly Gmail contact. But again, the other Master Tools pages are incredibly helpful.
We've talked about tools. Let's also talk about metrics. And I think it's fair to say that, even some traditional and long-standing metrics, open rates, click-throughs, are becoming harder to trust. We've had challenges like Apple's MPP, and increasingly we're seeing new challenges like high-volume bot signups. So how are you advising senders to shift their focus when it comes to metrics? What new metrics do they need to start referencing when the traditional data points that they've used for all these years are increasingly unreliable?
One of those many opinions, strong opinions that I have, as many of us opinionated email marketers. Traditional metrics like open rates and such, they are not as reliable as before, or I would say they are completely unreliable with regards to certain things. At the same time, from a deliverability perspective, they are still very valuable. My take is that while you cannot rely on opens and clicks to identify if a user is engaged / active, they're not reliable for that. They are still incredibly reliable to identify other issues. That's the very first thing I wanted to say, is that open rates are incredibly helpful. They're not a vanity metric. They are a vanity metric if you're a marketer, but they are incredibly valuable if you're a deliverability person. And another thing that people don't, non-human interactions, so automatic opens, or they don't happen for the sake of it. They don't open and click things because they want to, just to waste money and resources, because it's expensive for them to run those kind of checks. So the fact itself that you have a spike in opens, for example, or in click, maybe it's telling you, okay, maybe my reputation isn't that great. Maybe there's something suspicious in this email that, again, if you put yourself in the anti-spam or mailbox provider's shoes, was like, I don't fully trust this email. I want to double check even where those links. That also is a good opportunity to say another thing that I really care about is the fact that there are metrics used very wrong. Everybody want to see high open rates. And I see people doing something very wrong and shady, and they say, oh, by doing this, I increased my open by 10%. Yeah, of course, because now you have more non-human interaction. In that case, having a lower open rate is better, okay? So sometimes I opens, I clicks, and people celebrate for them. They're not necessarily a good thing. Exactly the same thing might apply to spam rate. I see people celebrating that they have a 0% spam rate. And that's when I'm saying, 0% spam rate. It means that your emails are already landing in spam. Very natural that somebody report, even an LT sender, an LT mailing, an LT list, there always will be a certain percentage of people that report a message as spam will unsubscribe by reporting just because they don't realize how damage they do by doing that. There's always, even the best list, the best sender will have some activity.
We've all done it. We've all marked an email as spam. We all and now I'm so selective because I'm in deliverability. I'm like, you have to do something really wrong for me to mark these.
Let's also touch on authentication. So, here we're talking about the well-known ones, DKIM, SPF, DMARC. How does authentication play a role in helping maintain great reputation? And sort of following on from that, do you think senders should be more proactive in terms of monitoring their DMARC report?
No doubt about that. And
I wish everybody's watching instead of just listening so that they could see your face as you're reacting to these questions.
It's not like adding email authentication will improve your deliverability, will do something like that. It's about accountability. It's giving mailbox providers, anti-spams, the ability to know, oh, this is actually you. You are responsible for that. Monitoring DMARC is probably the most out there right now. Everybody implemented a DMARC because Yahoo and Google told them to do it. That's it. Their ESP told them to do it. They put it and put just a P equal none. That's it. No RUA, no anything, no reporting address there. So they are missing all the information. People think that DMARC is, set and forget. It requires a lot of effort. It requires a lot of eyes on it.
I think it is one of those aspects of deliverability that at the surface seems very complicated to people who are not like the three of us who are in the nitty gritty and the weeds all day of DMARC. So I understand like the let's just put this into a little corner. We've set it up, but I completely agree with you. It's like almost having a set of eyes, an extra set of eyes on your email program. We touched already on this a little bit in terms of how long a recovery process can take. Because for me, I've seen the cases we all hope for where there's some authentication issue that we can correct and things start looking good right away. And then we've seen some others where it takes months. So how long should a sender expect a recovery process to take? Like usually this is a long game, but is there anything that senders can do to fast track a recovery process, or is it always going to be a bit of a slow burn?
Avoid shortcuts. Having the right mindset is probably what, instead of the concept of engagement, I prefer to put in contrast in the same, on the same scale, positive signals, Gmail and the others. And they look at you and look at your users, your contacts, and how they interact. Are they interacting positively with your brand, with your emails, or negatively? So that's the magic sauce. That's exactly how you can improve things. If you know that that's what they're assessing, that you want to make sure that you have as many positive signals as, of course, natural, organic, the least amount of negative signals. So one of the things, for example, okay, if I have to provide one of the things that I always recommend, that no doubt is going to help, unsubscribe link. Okay, the unsubscribe link, everybody wants to put it down in the footer, very hidden there. Come on. If you are going to recover, at least, it will be a good practice every time, always. But if you want to recover fast, put that also on top of your email. Again, people are already leaving. If people are leaving, will look for and they will report the spam because that's the very first thing they will see, or they will use a list unsubscribe. Cool. But if you also provide in the template on the top, an unsubscribe link, some of them will pick that route. They're already leaving, but leaving in a safe way. It's not going to hurt your brand. It's not going to hurt your reputation. It's just going to people that want to stay on your list and get your content and all of that, they will ignore it. They will, even if you put 3 unsubscribe link on top, they will just scroll down to the actual content. So, during a recovery plan, this is something that I always recommend. Okay, start doing with that. And depending on the case, so, in some cases, like you should do it now and even after the recovery plan because it's just safer. Sometimes it's like, okay, in this case, just for the sake of the warm-up of the new reputation.
That's such a great answer. And to some extent, I think you preempted my next question, which was going to be, once you are back up and running, once you have recovered from the big nosedive, what are the essential ongoing practices? And I think you've summed them up beautifully. You want to make sure that your program is sending out as many of those positive signals as possible to the mailbox providers. And also remember, they have visibility of one or two that we don't necessarily see, markers, not spam notifications, for example, or emails that you've sent that generate a reply or a forward, which sends out a really positive signal. So I think you've covered some great ground there. Danielle, I reckon we got time for...
Yeah. And actually, I'm just going to quickly add one more thing on the unsubscribe front, because I completely agree. And I don't know how many times I've said this on the podcast, so forgive me, because this is probably the 50th. Process your unsubscribes immediately, please.
All right.
So they don't keep getting messages, because that link is only as good as the timing.
Nicola, we've covered a lot of ground today, from troubleshooting deliverability issues to navigating broken metrics. To close out, in one sentence, if you could give email marketers a key piece of advice to avoid reputation screw-ups.
Focus on consistent, good sending behavior.
Nicely.
Simple as, honestly. Nicola, thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights and expertise about email and deliverability with us today. So for listeners interested in connecting with you or learning more about your work, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
I'm on LinkedIn, Nicola Selenu, and of course you can follow my own LinkedIn page, Top Deliverability, full of funny memes about the industry. So yeah, LinkedIn will be the way.
Perfect. So everyone listening, be sure to tune in next time and hit subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And of course, don't forget to visit senderscore.org for more resources to help you become a stronger sender.
That's right. And final word, listen, we're always super proud of the guests who join us on Email After Hours. We're always looking for new guests to feature on future episodes. So if you'd like to join us in the weeks to come, drop a comment in the show notes, ping us on LinkedIn. We would love to hear from you and put you in the hot seat for a future episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Be sure to tune in next time and hit subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And don't forget to visit senderscore.com for loads more great resources to help you become a stronger sender.
To all you sleepless senders out there, thank you for joining us after hours, and see you next time.